Hey guys, welcome to Nick's Snack for Neologisms, where we define and discuss the most amazing words in the English language. This is episode 10. Last episode we covered harangue, abstemious, and lampoon. And in this episode we're covering irascible, sacrilegious, and promulgate. So let's get on to our first word, which is irascible. Say it with me. This is a very fun word to say, irascible. It's spelled I-R-A-S-C-I-B-L-E. That's I-R-A-S-I-C-B-L-E, irascible. And it means easily provoked to anger, very irritable, as in an irascible old man. It can also mean characterized or produced by anger, so an irascible response. So an old man that is irascible will act irascibly and will give you irascible responses. That is, responses that are very angry in nature. So I was thinking about irascibility, and when I myself get irascible, I tend to get a little irascible when I let my dogs out and they want to constantly bark when I'm trying to get something done. For instance, if I'm trying to make a podcast and every minute they start barking, I have to stop and I have to go out there and scream at them. So I eventually bring them back inside, but that's one thing that makes me a little irascible. What about you? When do you yourself get irascible? Maybe when you're under a lot of stress, or you're trying to maybe juggle a bunch of responsibilities at once. You might tend to get a little irascible. Or maybe you're stuck in a traffic jam and late for work. Or you might get irascible when you decide to pick up one item from Walmart at 8:30 p.m. on a Sunday, thinking no one else had the same idea as you. And then when you get there, you realize that everyone else had the same idea, and there's only one frickin' checkout lane open. You might get a little irascible. That happened to me like 2 weeks ago. FYI, it was kind of funny. It took me like 20 minutes to get out of Walmart, and all I had to buy was one thing. So that's irascible, easily provoked to anger, very irritable, and irascible old man. How do you remember it? I think there's two good ways to remember it. Like, one way is you can think that irascible almost has the word irrational, kind of rhymes with irrational, irascible. Someone acting irrational, I can't talk. Someone acting irrational might act irascible. It also sounds like there's the word rascal in there. I guess that's actually the way that I remember it. Kind of sounds like rascal, irascible. So I think of someone who's like a rascal might be a little like irritable, angry, even though they're kind of menacing. That's how I remember it. So irascible rascal. It's hard to say. The irascible rascal. That's how I remember it. Okay, so let's move on to some online examples of the word irascible being used in a sentence. The first example goes, he was a little quick-tempered and irascible, but he had a kind heart. The next example goes, the irascible and old militia colonel was there to oppose them, and his harsh arguments disappointed his colleagues. And the next example goes, we all know that newspapers' front pages are put together by crusty, irascible, but ultimately lovable editors. And the last example goes, he had the ability to upset people with his irascible manner, but then charm them with his witty comments and childlike eyes. So that is the word irascible, and it means easily provoked to anger or very irritable, as in an irascible old man. All right, let's move on to our next word, which is sacrilegious. It's another great word. It is spelled S-A-C-R-I-L-E-G-I-O-U-S. That's S-A-C-R-I-L-E-G-I-O-U-S, sacrilegious. And it means to violate or profane that which is sacred or held sacred. So, for instance, if you were to walk into a church and openly declare that you are against the church's teachings, that would be very sacrilegious of you. And something that came to my mind when I was doing this word is maybe 10 years ago, the Colorado NBA team, the Nuggets, had a player named Mahmoud, Abdul Rauf. He was this Middle Eastern player that came from maybe Iran or Iraq or something like that. And during the national anthem, he either didn't stand up or he didn't remove his hat or something like that. And a lot of Coloradans and people nationwide thought it was very sacrilegious, so much so that I believe he got fined a certain amount of money for not doing that. Which, according to my opinion, is actually sacrilegious of people to do, because if you're in America, you should have the right not to believe in what most Americans believe in, as sacrilegious as it may be. But that's another topic. So that's just what came to my mind. Sacrilege doesn't always have to do with religion. It can just be something that you go against that is culturally valuable, or something that is deemed valuable within a certain culture. So if you were to openly denounce the value of education in America, that would probably be considered sacrilegious by most people. So that's the word sacrilegious, to violate or profane that which is sacred or held sacredly. So how do you remember this word? I think there's two ways to remember it. The first way is that it kind of sounds almost like it almost sounds like irreligious, like there's a bit of irreligiosity into it. So sacrilegious. So something that's irreligious is something that goes against religion. If you go against religion, you're probably going to be sacrilegious. Another way you can think of it is that sacrilegious, it's something that's almost like you're going to sack religion. You're going to do away with religion. So if you're sacking religion, then you're going to be sacrilegious, and you'll probably do things that are profane against that religion, or that particular religion or religion in general. So that's the way to remember it. So let's move on to some online examples of sacrilege or sacrilegious being used in a sentence. The first example goes, some were rumored to have hired a taxi for the climb, sacrilege for a true pilgrim. The next example goes, demanding evidence of their divinity is considered sacrilegious. And the next example goes, to them, my tongue and cheek opinions scream sacrilege and idiocy. And the last example goes, she was convicted of having a sacrilegious love affair behind closed doors. So that is the word sacrilege, to violate or profane that which is sacred or held sacredly. All right. Good word, sacrilege. It's fun to say too, as is irascible. They're both fun sounding words. So let's go on to our last word, which is promulgate. It's spelled Promulgate, 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 promulgate. And it means to make known by open declaration, publish, proclaim formally, or put into operation, as in a law, decree of a court, etc. So in other words, that which is publicly declared is something that is promulgated. It's as simple as that. So anything that's just openly declared, or if you make an announcement of a certain sort, you are promulgating something. So for instance, by publishing this podcast, I have promulgated my love for words or of words. If you go to court, for instance, you may be forced to promulgate some sort of confidential information regarding your own personal affairs, perhaps, or something like that. What would be another example of promulgation? How about the Nazis during World War II? They employed all sorts of different methods for promulgating their agenda. That is promulgation. Or when a new law comes into effect, that law is then considered recently promulgated. Okay, so that's promulgation. So let's see. How do you remember promulgation? Sort of has that PROM in it, as in promote. So you can sort of thinking promoting something, promulgating something. You can also think promulgates as in promoting something by opening the gate to your castle. And when you open the gate to your castle, you're promoting something openly by opening the gate. Promulgate. I don't know if that works. Hopefully that helps, but that's one way to do it. All right, so let's move on to some online examples of the word promulgate being used in a sentence. The first example goes, wise lawmakers know that it is a mistake to promulgate legislation that is impossible to obey. And the next example goes, the cabinet may promulgate administrative regulations to implement the provisions of this chapter. And the next example goes, these objectives have to be promulgated within the organization. And the last example goes, the Afghan government should immediately revoke a recently promulgated directive restricting the freedom of the press. So that is the word promulgate, and it means to make known by open declaration, to publish, or to proclaim formally, or put into operation. Promulgate. Pretty easy word. Just to promote something, to announce something. Promulgate. All right, so those are our three words: irascible, sacrilegious, and promulgate. Let's review them and see if we can remember their definitions. All right. So the first word is irascible. Do you remember the definition to the word irascible? As in, today, I met a very irascible old man. Good. It means easily provoked to anger, or someone who's very irritable, or something characterized or produced by anger, irascible. All right, how about the word sacrilegious? As in, we all know that when the devil enters the church, he's going to make some sacrilegious comments. Sacrilege. What does the word sacrilege mean? Good. It means something that violates or profanes that which is sacred or held sacred, or something that goes against the church is sacrilegious. And lastly, the word promulgate. As in, I am going to promulgate now my love affair with words. Promulgate. What does the word promulgate mean? Good. It simply means to openly declare something. All right. So that's episode 10, you guys. Thanks for listening. If you haven't already, please leave me a review on iTunes. And then I think my next 2 episodes, which hopefully I'll be doing within the next day or 2 if I don't get too lazy, are going to be review episodes where we go through the words covered through episodes 1 through 5 and then words covered through episodes 6 through 10. All right, so stay tuned for those episodes and we'll see you then. Bye.